Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Energy Update Weekly, a weekly program where we look at trends in the oil industry, crude oil production prices, and we look at some oil-producing basins around the United States to look at what the activity levels are in these various areas of the country. So let's get to the charts and see what's going on this week. So the first place we usually run to is oilprice.com. Look at the price of the crude oil, and we use West Texas Intermediate or WTI crude as our benchmark. And you can see this is 17 hours old, $86.87 a barrel, where last week at this time it was $93.06. So that's about $6.25 decrease in the price of oil, which is good. So we should be seeing that reflected in the prices at the pump. If we go to the rig count, and this is week ending 9/2 as today, we see that there has been a decrease of 5 rigs nationwide, a loss of 9 drilling for oil, but picked up 4 in gas, so a net change of 5. So this has been kind of a decreasing trend through August into September now, as we're moving toward the fourth quarter, which traditionally we see a pickup in rig activity. We'll just keep watching that and see if that happens this year. Okay, frac spreads last week ending 9/2, that's down 5 from the previous week, so 282 compared to 287 the week before, but still holding pretty steady with the average, of 240 a week through the year. So we jump over to the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, to look at the status of stocks and supply. And so petroleum stocks, crude oil, excluding Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 418.3 million barrels, and that is down 3.3 million barrels over the past week. And if you look down through this column of numbers, you can see that almost all of these petroleum stocks are down or kind of holding even. The Petroleum Reserve, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, this is underground reservoirs. This is oil that is under the ground in the formation and is to be used for strategic purposes. The fields were developed for primarily for military use during times of emergency, and so it is a reserve. Current supply 450 million barrels. That is down 3.1 million barrels from the week before. And so, as we've been seeing, that the Strategic Petroleum Reserves are continuing to be pumped for some reason. You can see a year ago 621 million barrels in the SPR. Now it's a change of 171 million barrels over the previous year. And why? So that's something that maybe we should be asking some people who might be able to do something about this. Okay, total motor gas, 214.5 million barrels in supply. And again, we break that down into all the different formulations. Fuel oil for jet fuel, 38.6 million barrels. Distillate fuel oil or diesel fuel, 111.7 million barrels. So total stocks, excluding Strategic Petroleum Reserve, so this includes the crude oil sitting on the surface plus all the refined products, 1,214 million barrels of material in stock. Okay, supply last week, 12.1 million barrels a day production average, so slightly up a little bit over the previous week. And again, broken down into Alaska and the lower 48, so 500,000 barrels coming from Alaska, the rest of it coming from the U.S. And this is, again, a phenomenal number. 20 years ago, it was a fraction of this, and the imports were way higher than they are now. So total crude to refineries last week, 16.238 million, down 17 million barrels. And we will see that if we go to the refining page, that the utilization coming out of the refinery last week is 92.7%. And so slight change. Here's that 17 million barrels from the previous week to the end of last week. But looking good, supplies look good, prices are down, which is good. Okay, each week we've been going through and looking at a petroleum producing basin. And today you see these counties lit up in blue down here in Oklahoma and kind of north central Texas. And most of these wells, and kind of where I'm trying to circle with my pointer here, that is a area referred to as the Anadarko Basin. And the Anadarko Basin is a producer in Oklahoma, parts of North Texas, and we'll take a look at the specifics of that in a minute. It includes what's called a total petroleum system. So there's a number of formations at different depths in this basin that are producers. So a total of 42 rigs running in this area. The same as the previous week, down from a month ago, a couple of rigs, but almost double from what it was a year ago. So you can see that most of these, 88%, are horizontal wells. The formations in the Anadarko Basin that produce oil are anywhere from a few thousand feet below the surface, 6,000 to 8,000 feet in the vertical extent, all the way down to some of them are 20,000 feet deep. This area has been called by the EIA the deepest horizontal shale play in the world. So they will drill in some cases 16,000 feet vertical before they turn the bit horizontal into the formation. So we can see that 90% oil, 10% gas. Okay, so the Anadarko Basin is in Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, and Colorado. This is a 2010 report from the USGS that looks at the oil and gas assessment. And you can see that this red outline on this map here, this is the Anadarko Basin. And the Woodford, which on the previous page we looked at, there were 3 different units in the Woodford that they're included in these counties we're looking at. That's this yellow line, so it extends outside the basin. The blue is the Pennsylvanian or Younger rocks that lie above it. Okay, so these are Ordovician through Pennsylvanian formations that the oil is produced from, but the source rocks come and populate what's called, again, a TPS, a total petroleum system, of Cambrian through Mississippian reservoirs. And so there's a stack of rocks here, maybe 10 or 12 or 14 different formations that are able to produce oil, which is typical in most of these deep basins. So the latest assessment, again, this is over 10 years old, 495 million barrels of oil, 27 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and 410 million barrels of natural gas liquids. So the oil and natural gas liquids are about 1 billion barrels and 27 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which is a lot. And so this again is the advantage of these horizontal wells that we've been talking about here. And there's 2 primary advantages to horizontal wells. One is that in a traditional well, if a formation is 100 feet thick and you drill through it vertically, you're producing from 100 feet. When the bit is turned from vertical to horizontal in that 100-foot thickness, now we can drill 10,000 plus 15,000, in some cases even more, into that formation. And so instead of a 100-foot productive zone, we have a 10,000 or a 15,000-foot productive zone. That's the advantage. The other advantage is that these shales that are being drilled like this, these are what are referred to as source rocks. These are the rocks that contain the organic matter that matures at depth, at temperature in these basins to produce the hydrocarbon. That's referred to as the source rock, and then the oil and the gas over time will leak out of those very, very tight, low permeability shales into the surrounding rock that has greater permeability, greater porosity, and that's where the oil is stored. Traditionally, that's where we would get the oil from. Oil people have known that these shale rocks have the hydrocarbon in it, but there's no way to get it out because, again, it's virtually impermeable. There's no flow. The oil does not flow out. Now with this horizontal drilling, we can penetrate those source rocks for many, many thousands of feet. And then hydraulic fracturing goes in there and breaks that rock up into smaller pieces that creates permeable pathways for the oil to flow from the source out into the wellbore, and we pump it to the surface. So it is nothing new. Fracking has been done in the oil industry for almost 100 years now. Many formations in almost every oil basin in the U.S. has been fracked over time. The only difference is that these wells are being fracked instead of, a 100-foot vertical thickness, it is a 10,000 plus foot horizontal thickness that's being fracked to create the pathways for the oil to flow. That is the reason why our domestic production in the United States has gone up from 3 to 4 million barrels a day in the early 2000s to last week 12.1 million barrels a day. So it's not that we're running out of oil here in this country, it's that we finally are getting it out of the ground, and if allowed to do so, we could even produce more. So that's the general flow of how things work in the patch. So as long as we're allowed to continue to drill and to frack, we can keep those numbers up, keep exports down, and be more reliant on ourselves for our energy. Okay, so that'll do it today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Point your friends this way if you know anyone who's interested in how the oil industry works and what the stocks and supply and prices and things of crude and regular gas is. See you next week.